Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour for the second day in the repeated 6th month and 16th year of Chenki. And this is Tim Elvis sitting in for the second king of Changguk, Kim Jin-moon, and I explained yesterday about what it means that we are in the repeated 6th month, and so I won't do that anymore today. Okay, so let's go take our tour around the kingdom. And right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, we have 69 degrees, mostly clear. High of 89 today, mostly sunny, warm, and humid. A thunderstorm in spots this afternoon. Tonight, partly cloudy and humid, low of 70 degrees. Father's hometown, Cheongju, North Korea. Well, what is today North Korea, but who knows about tomorrow. Currently 89 and sunny, getting down to 71 tonight, cloudy and humid. Tomorrow, partly sunny, hot and humid, and then 92 for a high tomorrow. And at the Turning Moon Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, currently 67 and mostly cloudy, and then 87 for a high today, less humid with times of clouds and sun, 68 for a low tonight, cloudy and humid, a thunderstorm late. And in Limestone County, Texas, at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, 72 to start the day there, mostly clear. 90 degrees for a high, humid with intervals of clouds and sunshine, an afternoon and thunderstorm in parts of the area. 76 for a low tonight. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 86 and sunny, 77 for a low tonight. Tomorrow, a morning shower in places, otherwise partly sunny and very hot. 96 for a high. And yes, not to be outdone, at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently 89, mostly clear, widely separated thunderstorms this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy and humid, 75 for a low. Tomorrow, high of 97, very hot with intervals of clouds and sunshine. Okay. And then in Ilan, Taiwan, on the island of Taiwan, the Republic of China, 85 degrees currently, overcast skies, 78 for a low tonight. A thunderstorm in spots this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy. Tomorrow, cloudy with a little rain in the afternoon, high of 93. So it looks like the Gunma Palace has taken the prize today. All right, let's go to Father's Word. And let me here. Start to bring it up. And let's see here. A book on true parents. We were here already, weren't we? Same page. Okay. So this is a long speech that Father gave January 19th, 1963. And the title of the speech appears to be that the history of the providence of salvation, history of providence of restoration is a history in search of the true parent. And so let's do this paragraph here. On the earth, Jesus had to go the course of restoring, well, physically, he had to go through the course of restoring the position of the son. Spiritually, he had to go the course of restoring the position of parents, or parent. Well, he's just one, so I guess parent. The Korean doesn't really distinguish between singular and plural in the majority of cases. You just have to figure it out from the context. I think in this case, it's singular because we're talking about one person. So, so he had to accomplish his mission of these two aspects and establish a beginning point where he could become one with God. Okay. Thank you, Father, for the lesson that you've given us today. Let's put this back here. Okay. All right, so let's see what's going on today. And, not really a whole lot today. President Trump is in Scotland, and he has some properties there, of course. And but he's also apparently meeting with some European leaders while he's there, and so forth. So we'll see what news comes out of there. Also, but let's keep our eye on China. And as I keep saying, this is the ball that we have to keep our eye on. And there's been a lot of talk about, Xi Jinping maybe losing control and stuff like that. Of course, as I've pointed out, even if Xi Jinping loses his position, that does not really advance the providence per se. it's the CCP itself that needs to be brought down, not Xi Jinping, not one person. The party can put in someone new, and then actually putting in someone new will give people hope that, okay, maybe the party's going to change. Maybe it's going to reform. Of course, we know that to be a lie, but many people don't. And so actually Xi Jinping losing his position before the CCP collapses probably would actually prolong the provenance of destroying the CCP. So we have to be careful. But anyway, it says here that Beijing purges Chinese leader Xi's ally from top military ruling body. And we had this, on those sort of YouTube videos that were not quoting any source, and we didn't really know who was making the YouTube videos. But in this case, we actually have a source. And apparently, this is the guy that's been purged. The Chinese Communist Party has expelled a longtime ally of Chinese leader Xi Jinping from the military's top decision-making body, the latest in a series of purges that have raised questions about the party leader's political control. Okay, this is actually not the article that I was looking for. Hold on a second. Okay. This is actually not the one that I was. Okay, this is the one I was looking for here. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. We'll get to that one too. That was the Navy, right? That was the Navy. This is the Army. I don't want to confuse those two, do we? Okay. China's quietly removed its ground forces' third-ranking officer without explanation, adding to signs that purges in the military's top brass are ongoing. But purges are always ongoing, it seems, in China's military, and it's hard to know the reason. But I think, for one thing, we know that the Chinese military has a certain degree of autonomy when it comes to business operations, and they have their own businesses, and these businesses do have international trade, and they make money by exporting and importing and stuff like that. So it's always possible that someone is becoming too powerful, and so is being removed for that reason. So the fact that these people are being removed may not necessarily mean that Xi Jinping is losing power. It may be that they've grown too much in power, and so they're being removed because they might be a threat to Xi Jinping. One thing that Xi Jinping we know has done is that he is not allowing anyone to come up who might be a successor. He keeps cutting them down, and this may be part of that, I think. Lieutenant General Cai Zhijun has been named the Chief of Staff of the People's Liberation Army Ground Forces, according to footage of a meeting with Pakistani military leaders that was aired on CCTV, China's state broadcaster, on July 25, which showed Kai's new title. So, okay, here we go. Yeah, so you see, CCTV, which is it's a state broadcaster, okay, so they're not going to make a mistake on someone's title. And they aired footage with this guy, with this Cai Zhijun, showing him to be the Chief of Staff of the People's Liberation Army. And so people looking at that, the China watchers will say, well, wait a second. We thought that Li Zhonglin was Chief of Staff of the People's Liberation Army ground force, right? So that's how they figure that now Li Zhonglin has been purged or something. Anyway, he's no longer in that position. And so Li Zhonglin was in that role since February of 2023. So it wasn't all that long, was it? No official explanation was given for Li's departure, and it remains unclear whether Li will take a new job. So, and this is another point. Maybe that he's getting promoted. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful about interpreting things the way that serves our narrative. The Chinese military, known for its secrecy, has become increasingly tight-lipped in recent months following a series of high-level upheavals that raised questions about Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping's political control. Rumors have been circulating for weeks that Li was under investigation as part of a sweeping purge of the military establishment, which has ensnared more than a dozen senior commanders and defense leaders. Investigation for what? suspect that, maybe he's getting too powerful. Maybe, he's preparing for the collapse of the CCP. The last time the PLA Army's former commander appeared in official media reports was in August 2023, when he accompanied then Defense Minister Li Shangfu on a visit to Belarus. After the trip, Li Shangfu vanished from public view for about 2 months before being unexpectedly removed from his ministerial position in October 2023. In June 2024, he was ultimately expelled from the Communist Party on, there you go, corruption charges. Corruption charges can mean anything. Corruption charges will cover a lot of things because, well, corruption is kind of the norm. So, so the fact that he's being charged with corruption probably does not give us insight into the real reason he was removed. Again, it's possible that some people are preparing for a post-CCP China, right? Or maybe a post-Xi China, or even a post-CCP China. Following the minister's downfall, another senior military official, Admiral Miao Hua, who oversaw the entire military's political loyalty as an ally of Xi, was abruptly suspended and placed under investigation for alleged corruption in 2024. Miao was kicked out of China's top military body, the Central Military Commission, on June 27th. On the same day, the Chinese authorities announced that Vice Admiral Li Hangjun, the Chief of Staff of the PLA Navy, and this is the story that I was looking at just a moment ago, had been expelled from the party-controlled legislature, indicating that the Navy's third-ranking officer had become a target of anti-corruption campaign. In the wake of a string of scandals, China's defense ministry has taken down a section from its website that introduced the military's top leaders. Meanwhile, the CMC has, this would be the Central Military Commission, all right? And the Central Military Commission is actually it's an organ of the Communist Party, and it actually controls the military. So it's the chairman of the Central Military Commission that is in fact, the commander-in-chief of the military. And, well, guess who that is? Yes, Xi Jinping. Okay, so meanwhile, the Central Military Commission has issued new regulations for the military's political leaders. The PLA Daily, the Army's official newspaper, said on its front page on July 21. So you see, we have sources and dates, and this is actual reporting, which we can rely on. The report didn't mention when the regulation was issued, nor was the full text made public. The main purpose of this directive, according to the report, was to comprehensively purge toxic influence and rebuild the image and credibility of political leaders. Okay, so Dorothy Lee doing a good job there at the Epoch Times. So, but what does it mean? This is the problem, and we are quick to assume that, okay, this means that Xi Jinping is losing power, but we have to be careful. Don't assume that the interpretation that serves our narrative is the correct one. We have to continue to watch what is going on, okay? We already had the story on the army or the military, the admiral, right? Okay, so one more story from the Epoch Times on China. Defending dollar supremacy may be the next phase of U.S.-China trade war, okay? As the world's reserve currency and primary medium for financial transactions, the U.S. dollar is the linchpin U.S.-led global order. Okay, while U.S. trade war may be transitioning to a monetary standoff, possibly, as U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies kickstart a reshuffling of global supply chains and trade, Beijing is looking to another battleground, the Chinese yuan versus the U.S. dollar. I don't think so. I don't think so. The Chinese yuan, that would be like having a first grader going up against a WWE wrestler. And it's China's own actions that make the yuan weak as an international currency or international reserve. The first of all, the severe capital controls that exist. You cannot just freely take Chinese currency out of China like you can dollars out of the United States. You can, people say, oh, no, you can't take more than $10,000. You can. You just have to report it. You just have to fill in some forms if you want to take dollar cash. And if it's not dollar cash, if it's a bank wire, then, you can wire as much as you want, and people do all the time. And the second is the rule of law, of course. And the United States, there's some problems with that, but still far, far better than China. Far, far better than China. And a stable political system, well, China thinks that it has or they're trying to say that they have a stable political system, but dictatorships are never stable, and people with money know this. So they're going to be very careful because the political system is not transparent, and dictatorships can fall at any moment. So for these and other reasons, the Chinese yuan doesn't even compare to the US dollar in international financial markets. And I know BRICS and all that, Russia, but in the long run, Chinese yuan doesn't have a chance. But anyway, let's look at what they're saying here. Last month, Pan Gongshen, head of Chinese central bank, reiterated the regime's interest in promoting the internalization of the yuan, also known as the renminbi, at this forum, a leading economic forum in Shanghai. This is propaganda. This is propaganda. Okay. So if they really wanted to do that, then there are things that they can do, right? They can get rid of the capital controls. They're not going to do that. Or they could improve their law and order. Well, they're not going to do that. Or they could increase regime stability by being more transparent. They're not going to do that. So this is just words. It's just propaganda. The dominance of currencies, especially in the digital world, will be the next focus of the U.S.-China trade war, according to Mike Sun, a U.S.-based businessman with decades of experience advising foreign investors and traders doing business in China. He uses an alias to avoid reprisals from the Chinese regime. William Li, chief economist at the Milken Institute, concurred. Li told the Epoch Times that the fear of sanctions has spurred the regime to try to expand the use of the yuan, an alternative cross-border payment system. Now, China is concerned about potential sanctions before its digital currencies can gain traction and become more widely adopted, he said. Concerns that Li mentioned are front and center for policymakers in Beijing. In a June speech in Shanghai, China's central banker expressed concerns that the traditional cross-border payment infrastructure can be easily politicized, weaponized, and used as a unilateral sanction instrument as the geopolitical tension escalates. I think the reality is that Chinese leaders realize that their economy is very much tied into the global economy. And this is, of course, one of the points where China is very, very different from the Soviet Union in 1989 or 1991. The Soviet Union, of course, was not tied into the global economy, and most of their trade was done with their satellite countries, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, etc., Romania, etc., Yugoslavia, and China at that time. So when the Soviet Union fell, actually had a very, very minimal effect on the global economy because there wasn't all that much tie-in. China is in a very different situation. The world economy relies very much on China to maintain itself, and also China relies on the global economy. And the global economy is, yes, it is centered on the United States of America and the dollar, no matter what BRICS countries may say or anything like that. Now, China, because they don't trust their own, system, is accumulating more gold because they don't trust their own currency, and they're paying down their dollar denominated assets, the U.S. Treasuries, because they need cash in order to get that gold, and also to defend their currency against the dollar, against the Japanese yen, and against the euro, and so forth. But China very much realizes that they are in a dollar world, and so I don't think that China really sees itself as going head to head with the United States in a monetary war. Rather, what they want to avoid is as this last sentence here said, China is concerned about potential sanctions before its digital currencies can gain traction and become more widely adopted. And well, the fact that this whole idea about becoming more widely adopted is kind of a wishful thinking, pie in the sky. But they are concerned about sanctions because they know that they're dependent on the dollar. And if the United States were to cut a major China bank out of the dollar system, out of the SWIFT system, for example, then China would be in severe danger of economic collapse. And they know this. And but this is not going to be avoided by China's digital currencies becoming more accepted in the world, because they're not. They're not going to become more accepted in the world, and they know this. I think they realize this. So on the one hand, they're paying lip service really to sort of the BRICS, and because the BRICS sort of give problems to the United States. And they like people who give problems to the United States. That's why they like North Korea, and they like Russia, and they like countries like Brazil, so forth, and maybe even India sometimes, because they sort of keep the United States distracted. But fundamentally, I think that China realizes that if they get sanctioned by the United States, they're going to be in deep, deep trouble. Why would they be sanctioned? Well, because they would be sanctioned if the United States accuses them of helping the Russian war effort in one way or another. You notice that China has not really overtly helped Russia in its war against Ukraine. They have not sent tanks, they have not sent planes, they have not sent soldiers. North Korea has, of course, but North Korea, they've got just about every sanction in the book, and they're cut out from the dollar system. So they basically in a situation where they have nothing to lose, and they know how to get around these things, right? They print fake dollars. They manufacture drugs. They steal Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies off of exchanges. They plant their tech workers into American companies. They are quite innovative and quite creative when it comes to getting around sanctions. Kim Jong-un, he's got to have that next year's model of the Mercedes-Benz, right? Can't keep the dear leader from that. So they're actually quite creative in how they do these things. But China, of course, is a much bigger economy, and they really cannot just rely on stealing like that. North Korea is kind of like what do they call it? What do they call it in the mafia? A crew. They're fairly small, but China is much, much bigger operation. So they cannot sort of reproduce North Korea's model. All right, let's see here. Let's see if there's anything else worth looking at here in the same article. In a June speech in Shanghai, China's central banker expressed concerns that the traditional cross-border payment infrastructure can be easily politicized, weaponized, and used as a unilateral sanction instrument as the geopolitical tensions escalates. Okay, he's talking about the dollars, right? Dollar system. Another prominent chief economist in China wrote in late May, financial sanctions and countermeasures will probably become a battlefield of U.S.-China competition in the next phase. Okay. These economists are not just scholars, but a well-connected brain trust of senior Chinese Communist Party officials, Sun told the Epoch Times. Hence, the experts don't make recommendations. They foreshadow and interpret the regime's actions. Lian also warned the United States might start imposing sanctions on a few Chinese entities, then expand the scope, eventually excluding China from the US dollar-based system. And this is what they're afraid of. That's true. This is very true. So they're agreeing with me, but in a more of a sort of a roundabout backdoor way. As the world's reserve currency and primary medium for financial transactions, the US dollar is the linchpin of the US-led global order. By exporting commodities to China and then buying electric vehicles from China, the member countries of BRICS can form an alternative trading system denominated in yuan, according to Li. Yeah, in your dreams. In your dreams. I don't think so. Yeah. Of course, China is sort of promoting this because it gives headaches to the United States, but it's not going to happen. President Donald Trump, BRICS is trying to destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. Well, President Trump is a great guy. Maybe you know where I'm going with this. My mother always taught me to say nice things about someone before I start criticizing them. He's a great guy. There are things he does not understand. And I think there are people next to him that are teaching him. For example, he was saying, that he's going to fire Jerome Powell, but now he says, no, that's not going to be necessary. And I think probably someone next to him told him that if he fires Jerome Powell, rates are going to go up, not down, because it's going to crash the demand for U.S. Treasuries. Price will crash, and yields always go in opposite direction from price, so that way the rates will actually skyrocket. And so now he's sort of softening on that. Says, no, I'm not going to fire him. That's not necessary. And he's coming up with other solutions like maybe getting rid of the capital gains tax on mortgages or on home sales. Someone needs to tell him about BRICS as well, because obviously he does not understand. And and I don't know, maybe this is another populist. No, I don't think so. People talk about him playing 3D chess or 4D chess. I don't think so. I don't think he plays 3D or 4D chess. I think he can barely play 2D chess. That's the conclusion I've come to. I think that basically with Trump, you have to pretty much take him at his word for that time. But a lot of people have started talking about the taco trade. Taco. You know what taco stands for? TACO. Trump always chickens out. And they point out that Trump will put out something really harsh, like, okay, 100% tariff. And then, but that will always come back, and it won't be 100% when it actually comes to pass. I'm just giving 100% as an example. So this whole BRICS thing as well, I hope President Trump doesn't take it too seriously. If he wants to use it as a sort of a political talking point, sort of a populist talking point, then sure, go ahead. But Brazil, Russia, I banged the table. Should be careful about that. Okay, here we go. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then a few other countries that have joined since then, right? And of course, the more countries they have, the more difficult it's going to be for them to be united. And so they're just kind of a ploy, I think. All right, so BRICS is a China and Russia-led bloc. It's not a bloc, come on. Designed to counterbalance. No. Okay, it also includes Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Iran. So show me one country among those that could actually lead this bloc. in a assault on the United States leadership. China? No, no, no. China likes to talk tough, but when one sanction against a Chinese bank and they're done for. The BRICS philosophy of dethroning the dollar is real and credible threat to the United States, and that's why Trump is imposing extra tariffs on these countries, according to Lee. So, so this guy Lee is trying to give credibility to the BRICS. The BRICS philosophy. That's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Philosophy. Philosophy of dethroning the dollar. Not strategy, not objective, not goal, but philosophy. That's a strange phrase to use there. During its latest summit in Brazil, the BRICS, which Xi Jinping did not attend, Putin did not attend, member states issued a joint statement on July 6th criticizing tariffs without naming the United States. They didn't dare, did they? They wouldn't dare. Shortly afterward, Trump said on Truth Social that any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS would receive an additional 10% tariff. Days later, he threatened a 50% levy on Brazil, a founding member of BRICS. They're the first one, citing the ongoing trial of its former president Jair Bolsonaro, a Trump ally. At a cabinet meeting on July 8th, the U.S. president said BRICS wants to destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. Well, they may want to destroy the dollar, yes, but they're not going to. What's going to destroy the dollar? Well, the Federal Reserve of the United States of America is actually the one that's going to destroy the dollar, and the Department of Treasury, and the United States Congress. That's what's going to destroy the dollar, not Brazil or Russia or India or China or South Africa or Saudi Arabia or who else here? Ethiopia, are you kidding? Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Iran, none of those are going to destroy the dollar. It's the Federal Reserve, it's the Congress, it's the Treasury Department, it's the politicians that are going to destroy the dollar. That's what they've been doing for the past 100+ years since the Federal Reserve was created, and also since 1971. Here, okay. If we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war, Trump said. We would not be the same country any longer. Well, that's true, but I wouldn't worry, yes, okay, I'm not sharing this with you, am I? Okay. Yes, if you take that statement alone, that is a true statement. But as I said, if we lose the world standard dollar, we should place the blame on the Federal Reserve, on the Treasury Department, on Congress, and politicians that have been debasing the dollar for decades and decades and decades. That's where we should place the blame. And I think President Trump he signed the Genius Act, well, it was about a week ago now, where he is promoting stable coins. And we'll see how that works out. Maybe a little, we don't really know how that's going to be operated. The idea of banks issuing their own stable coins, companies, Walmart stable coin, the Costco stable coin, I'm sure is in the works. We're going to have to wait and see how all that sort of plays out. But I think the idea behind the stablecoin legislation is to shore up the dollar's position, even though I think everyone realizes that stablecoins are going to be losing value at the same rate as the dollar itself. Tariffs were a completely foreign language for most people when the Trump administration launched global reciprocal levies. Lee said, now the whole world has come to accept a minimum 10% tariff, he told the Epoch Times. Lee said final tariff numbers aren't as significant as the establishment of a new trade order. What matters is that we have a new building in place, and the new building is much more of a decentralized trading system, incentivizing capital inflow to the United States, Lee said. And that's something that has been missing from the WTO, that's the World Trade Organization. Well, okay, if this guy is right that it's incentivizing capital inflow to the United States, then that means that the value of the dollar is going to go up, not down, vis-a-vis or in comparison to other currencies. At the beginning of Trump's second term, the average tariff rate imposed by the United States was 3.4%, according to the World Trade Organization. The global trade system was characterized by low tariffs for exports to the United States, as well as significantly higher tariff rates for non-tariff trade barriers imposed by other countries. Currently, the administration has extended the deadline for tariff negotiations from July 9th to August 1st, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days from now. All right. 4 days, actually, if you just count the working days. August, with no further extensions. During the interim, baseline tariff rates remain at 10%. Trump has since issued tariff letters to dozens of countries, setting their rates at between 20 and 50%. Sun described this approach as a blind box method, meaning that the tariff rate is revealed only upon receipt of the letter. He said that in his view, such an approach is very effective with the lowest cost. Okay. Trump sends a message that he's the decision maker and other countries can only provide input under his framework, according to Sun. I think all countries will eventually agree with Trump's framework, including China, he told the Epoch Times. And this guy, a professor of international studies at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, said he views the trade negotiations as a prelude to a new Cold War, resulting in the world being split into two camps, one led by the United States and the other by China. Well, I think it's going to be a very short Cold War. And it may be that this is what brings down the CCP, the tariffs, in that sense. He noted that in the US-UK Trade Framework Agreement, the two countries agreed to enhance mutual economic security by addressing non-market policies of third countries. Although China is not named, it is known for protecting its state-owned enterprises with industrial policies and dumping its overcapacity into the global market. Right. There's J.D. Vance, there's Lutnick. Who else do I recognize? Who's this lady here? Oh, no. I don't recognize these other people. Okay, here we go. Left to right, Howard Lutnick. Well, this is Lutnick here. J.D. Vance. They're not giving this guy's name. British Ambassador to the U.S., Peter Mandelson. Is that who this guy is? Okay, he looks British. And U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Okay, Greer. And they're also not giving her name either. All right. So two mystery people there. There's little room left for tariff rate negotiations between the United States and China, the expert said in an interview with the Epoch Times. The ongoing discussions involve China trading its rare earths for U.S. chips and opening up its service industry, particularly banking and investment, to the United States. China has had a near monopoly on rare earths for decades, mainly because of predatory practices that have driven foreign businesses out of the sector. Therefore, it has been using its leverage on these critical minerals as a trade weapon. However, the United States has made significant strides in removing this checkpoint through public and private partnerships, as well as by fast-tracking the permitting process. MP Materials, the company that owns the only active rare earth mine in the United States, located in Mountain Pass, California, announced on July 10 a $400 million investment and a $150 million loan from the Department of Defense. For 10 years, the U.S. government will also guarantee the purchase of the company's rare earth output at a minimum price and ensure a minimum profit margin. In effect, the public-private partnership ensures that a U.S. national champion will remain vital regardless of what China does. So basically, the government is setting the price, or I guess you could call it a kind of a sweetheart deal anyway with this one company. They're but anyway, it's a defense necessity, I suppose. The U.S. has a trade surplus with China on services. Last year, China's giant trade surplus on goods of nearly 296 billion with the United States was offset by a service trade deficit of about 33 billion, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay, so 33 billion is not very much. So just the U.S. has a slight advantage, it looks like, on services. Beijing has been exploring further opening the service industry as a bargaining chip for its trade negotiations. Opening up China is a beneficial strategy to Beijing as well, according to he wrote in his article that opening up the financial market more would increase China's stickiness and make it too big to sanction. However, according to Sun and Lee, the tariff battle will mainly focus on these currencies as the United States has an oversized vulnerability. It's nearly $37 trillion debt. I guess this is a rare earth mine. This is in Wyoming. Wait a second, I thought you said the one in California was the only one. The only active rare earth mine in California, but here we have a photograph of something in Wyoming on July 11th, so it looks like it's active. Ramaco Resources plans to extract over 450 tons of rare earths from its 4,500 acre Brook mine. Well, okay, I guess they're mining something else right now. And I still have some questions about that. Okay. All right, anyway, let's see here. Defending dollar supremacy. Currently, the US dollar status as the global reserve currency and the primary currency used in international trade allows the United States to borrow more at a lower interest rate. The US debt level is so high now that the annual interest payment surpasses the national defense spending. In fiscal year 2024, which ended on September 30, 2024, the United States spent $882 billion on interest on its debt, compared with $874 billion on defense expenses, according to the Treasury Department. And and this was after Jerome Powell was reducing rates leading up to the presidential election in an effort, apparently, to help Kamala Harris. This makes the dollar's role even more crucial because any diminishing or significant doubt of the currency could lead to the nation's default. Well, there are many ways to default. And people talk about, well, what happens when people no longer have faith in the dollar? But the fact is that a lot of people have debts that were borrowed in dollars. And if you borrow dollars, you have to repay in dollars. And so that's maintaining not only do you have to repay in dollars, but you also have to pay interest in dollars, right? So it's been pointed out to me that when someone borrows dollars, that actually creates demand for future dollars, not just to repay the principal, but also to repay whatever debt is on that loan. So all fiat currencies go to zero, and the dollar is no exception. But it's not going to happen as nearly as quickly as I was originally anticipating. I think a few years ago I said 10 years. And now that we're getting closer to that 10-year mark, I'm beginning to maybe want to hedge my bets a bit. Maybe it'll take 20. But anyway, the dollar's role right now is because things are very different in the 21st century than they were when the pound lost its position in the early 20th century, or when the Spanish currency lost its position, or when the Roman currency lost its position. Things are very different today. And so it may take longer than it has in the past. And stable coins may also prolong that process as well. Not end the process, not turn the process around for sure, but prolong the process. But we'll have to see. Right now President Trump is handing out all sorts of goodies, right? He's giving all seniors, what is it, $6,000 a tax break, because seniors vote. Young kids don't vote, so young kids don't get the bonus, the tax breaks. But seniors vote, yes, so we get the tax breaks. But he's handing out that. He's talking about doing away with the capital gains on home sales. So he's basically doing all sorts of things to increase the money supply because he can't get the Fed to do it for him. So we'll see. Let's see. And by the way, Jerome Powell is going to be replaced anyway. I think in May of next year. I think his term comes to an end, and we can assume that President Trump will not be renominating him for a third term. All right, let's see here. So lead to the nation's default. Okay. China holds 756 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds, according to the Department of Treasury, which collects data through U.S.-based brokers. Hong Kong has an additional 253 billion. Right, so you add those together, it's about 900 billion, or actually it's $1 trillion, isn't it? Yeah, it's $1 trillion. Still, Sun believes that China is the top U.S. Treasury bond holder in the world, surpassing Japan's 1.1 trillion because of the unknown amounts that Beijing purchases through European institutions. That's an interesting point. So we don't even know how much China has. So people say, oh, China's dumping their treasuries. They're dumping their treasuries. Well, maybe they're just hiding them better. An April report by JP Morgan Chase states that contrary to common belief, China has not reduced its holdings of U.S. treasuries. The holdings are just more undercover, according to a translation of the original Chinese text. Oh, wow. This is something that I was not aware of. That's news. That is very interesting. And they even have a link here. Let's go to that link. Are they going to take us to the Chinese text? Yeah, they're going to take us to the Chinese text. Okay. Okay. I can read part of that. China, United States. I'm lost on the rest of it. Okay. I understand China. I understand the United States. What does that mean in this case? I don't know. I don't know. Okay. No, I don't know. We all have to learn Chinese, don't we? Okay. So Beijing could potentially sell off U.S. treasuries at a crucial moment when the market loses confidence in the U.S. dollar and force the interest rates to increase if no buyers can take in China's dumping. If the reserve currency status of the U.S. is shaken, it could also lead to the weakening of Washington's borrowing power. But this is suicide for China, right? Because if they dump their bonds, their U.S. treasuries, then that's going to collapse their economy. The CCP is aware of this and has been working for years to replace the US dollars with the yuan and with gold, I think. In 2015, Beijing launched its own cross-border interbank payment system, or CIPS, for transactions in Chinese yuan. Although CIPS is not comparable to the US dollar-denominated global payment system, called the Clearinghouse Interbank Payment Systems, or CHIPS, in terms of scale and global reach, it's getting bigger. So this is the, I know what that means. That's the Central Bank of China. China People's Bank, or in English, People's Bank of China, PBOC. See, I can read some Chinese. Each month, the financial transaction volume through CIPS is approximately 700 billion yuan, nearly double the amount in 2021, according to the Peterson Institute for International Economics. That scale is still trivial compared to the $1.1 trillion in daily transactions, or more than 50 trillion in monthly transactions through CHIPS, according to its official website. And CIPS still largely relies on the US-led SWIFT. Okay, so you're not independent at all. You're relying on the US system. And the CCP also took notice that the digital currency world offers a new field for competition. And in 2022, China introduced its digital yuan. And when the Olympics were held in Beijing, everybody who went there, all the foreigners who went there, got their own little yuan wallets. But I've not really heard that has really contributed to the yuan being used more around the world. The current situation calls for the United States to find more non-China parties to hold U.S. debt and defend its reserve currency status in both the physical and virtual worlds, according to study. So here, stablecoins can theoretically enable unlimited purchases of U.S. treasuries. The sky's the limit. And this is it. This is it. And I think this is what someone sort of whispered into President Trump's ear. And I think that is why he's now so gung-ho behind stablecoins, describing stablecoins as something like the most important financial innovation in history or something like that, which they're not. They're just another form of the dollar. And they're going to lose value just like the dollar and along the same rate as the dollar. He said the type of cryptocurrency referred to as stablecoins are a creative response to the challenge. Stablecoins can theoretically enable unlimited purchase of U.S. treasuries, he said. The sky's the limit. Because these stablecoins are issued by companies, and then the companies are required to hold either dollar cash or dollar cash equivalent as to back up that stablecoin that they've issued. But no one wants to hold cash, right? I mean, what are we going to do with cash? But instead they buy treasuries because why? Because treasuries give you interest. And then you just sit back and you collect the interest. It's a pretty good business model. You just sit back and collect the interest. While people do what they want with their stable coins. Stable coins are digital money pegged to a fiat currency at a 1-to-1 ratio. The issuers guarantee holders that they can convert the money back at any time. Therefore, stablecoins can provide the decentralization and cost effectiveness of digital money combined with the stability of a traditional fiat currency. Stability. It's amazing to me that that the dollar has lost, something like 98% of its value, or 95% of its value since 1913, and they call it stable. And it's losing several percentage points a year, and they call it stable. It's not stable, but anyway, they just sort of, you know what we mean. So far, 98% of stablecoins are pegged to the US dollar, and 80% are issued outside the United States, according to the Atlantic Council, a Washington-based think tank. Owners can bypass banks and even the unreliable currencies of their own home country. Yes. A lot of people are not allowed to have bank accounts. I think I've described previously the trouble that I had establishing a bank account in the United States after living overseas for 13 years and not having a bank account. But because I went to the bank that was the main bank of the Washington Times, because that was my employer at the time, and they decided to trust me. And I'm still with that bank. So anyway, a lot of people cannot get banks, and that's why these check cashing services that you see in low-income areas, you get paid by check, and you can't deposit it anywhere. So you have to go take it to a check cashing service, which charge an exorbitant interest. I don't know how much it is. I've never used one, but I'm sure it's more than 10%, perhaps 15, 20%, something like that. I don't know. That really is highway robbery. But people who cannot have bank accounts, they're forced to do that. But if they are able to have a cryptocurrency wallet that accepts USDT, for example, Tether, and they can have an online wallet. They can just download a wallet onto their smartphone, and then their employer can pay them that way, and that will bypass the bank. Owners can bypass banks and even the unreliable currencies of their own home country. For example, a coffee shop in Argentina or a small business owner in Vietnam can do business in the digital currencies directly pegged to the greenback. And this is why, I mentioned a few days ago that uh, countries are concerned about what they called monetary sovereignty. Right? That was a European central bank, or it was a European report, wasn't it, that talked about the concern over monetary sovereignty? Yeah, people are not going to use their currencies anymore, and just because the government says you must pay, you must use this, doesn't mean people are going to do it. Yes, the government can say we will only accept this currency, we will only accept the euro for your tax payments, for taxes. They can say that, and people will be forced to pay their taxes in euros. But in daily transactions, people are free to transact with whatever they want. They can use seashells if they want. Last year, the transaction volume via stablecoins reached $227.6 trillion, 7.7% more than the combined transaction volume of Visa, MasterCard, according to crypto exchange CEX.io. I think this is renminbi. That's the Chinese, and then this is in Chinese. I mean, in Japanese and in Korean, this means number, but I'll bet this means crypto, or uh, maybe something like that. Anyway, digital. I guess maybe digital renminbi. I'm cheating here. I'm looking at this English too. ECNY. All right. Stablecoin issuers generate revenue by investing the dollars that they receive in exchange for digital tokens, and they have already emerged as a significant holder of US debt. They hold more than $120 billion in treasury bills and are poised to hold more than $1 trillion in treasuries by 2028. So that would be $1 trillion, be more than what Japan has today, and even more than what China plus Hong Kong has today. According to an April report by the Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee. This means that stablecoin issuers may become the largest holders of Treasury bills over China and Japan. 2 months ago, Hong Kong passed stablecoin legislation, although it hasn't issued its own stablecoins yet. Chinese conglomerates such as Ant Group and JD.com Inc. have announced that they will submit their applications to become issuers as soon as the legislation takes effect on August 1, according to China's state-run media. So countries are trying to sort of make an end run around the U.S. Stable coins by issuing their own stable coins. But when you think that stable coins are going to lose value at the same rate as the currency that backs them, whether it's the Chinese currency or whether it's the euro or whatever, people are going to choose what? The cleanest shirt in the hamper, the least dirty shirt. They're going to choose the US dollar because that is the most stable, not stable, but most stable relative to other fiat currency stable coins, right? We'll see how this works out. It's very interesting. We're living in a very interesting era where, when did I stop sharing? I guess. Okay. But we're living in a very interesting era where things are changing very rapidly. And we need to follow what's going on because our personal interests and our family's interests are involved. And the world financial system may be going through some very significant catastrophic changes in the next years. I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I don't think now, with the advent of the dollar stablecoins, I don't think that the US dollar is going to go bust in the next 5 years. But other currencies may, and actually, in 5 years from now, if you're watching this video 5 years from now, you can tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. 5 years from now, the dollar may have taken over the world. And people may be saying, BRICS? What's BRICS? Those things that you use to build houses with? No. The three little pigs, they used bricks, didn't they? No. 5 years from now, people may have forgotten all about the BRICS, I suspect. 5 years from now, China. Where is China 5 years from now? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. My crystal ball is in the shop. It's getting repaired, and I really do not know. All right, gotta go. And so I will see you Monday, and we'll see what happens during the weekend. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.